Hello and welcome to Woven. We're so happy you're here today. I actually don't know of any announcements, except that we have. Do you want to say anything about signing up? Uh, yeah, yeah, that's probably true. But for anybody that wants,
Yeah. So, and this is extended to online folks as well. Uh, Pride is coming up fairly soon here, and we just need volunteers to help at the booth for Woven and BPC together. We kind of have a block for 2-hour shifts. So there's a sign up outside, and if you're online, you can probably reach out, and we'll get you signed up if you're interested, or you can just talk to me
they could
afterwards.
call the church, couldn't they? Church email at bpcbeaumont at bpclex.org.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So it's gonna be a hot one outside, so we need to prepare for that. But a big thing we need also is just set up and tear down as well. If you don't want to be a part of the 2-hour shifts, obviously I'm really encouraging our LGBTQ folks to enjoy Pride. If you do want to help out, there's tear down and also setting up. That should be fairly quick. The more hands that we have, but um, enjoy Pride if you are part of the LGBTQ
And there's
community.
a parade.
Yes, there will
Can
be.
everybody be a part of it?
I think so. It's from like 10 to 11. So I think it's like right before.
Oh, right before we
right
open.
before like the full Pride starts. I think
Oh.
they're kind of doing a parade to or through Pride, and then they'll be starting the whole thing up. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to march, I think this is a good opportunity.
yeah.
Thank you, Matt. I think that's our only announcement. And so I'm so happy to have Daniel here with me. Of course, you know Danny is our creative arts director, but Danny and I go back
We go way back.
about 6 years now, I guess.
7.
Because wasn't
7.
your first year my last year? And we've had Woven
You're
5
right.
years, so
No, you're right. Yeah. But technically, we met
We
when
met
I
before
was
then. That's right.
auditioning.
that's right.
But 6, yeah, no, 6 is more accurate.
Yeah. So, and for those of you who don't know, I'd love for you just to know some about Danny because when he auditioned at Asbury for worship arts program, you look differently.
Very different.
You look different, and
Yeah.
you
and I
were
was
different.
Yeah.
So
Back then, in those days, I thought that I was a straight girl. Imagine that. Or ask me for pictures. I have lots.
well, yeah. The first time we talked about it,
Yeah.
and I think I asked you
Mm-hmm.
if you had any maybe gay leanings or
Yeah.
queer things, and at that point she
Yeah.
said no,
No.
no, none.
I was very confident in that too.
Yeah,
Which
it
is
was-
kind of funny looking back. But, like, it made sense because at that time, a lot of the time I was confusing my attraction and my gender envy. So I truly had no idea what was going on up here. No clue. No thoughts. Just vibes. Straight ones, apparently.
Well, take us back to the beginning. You were born here in the United States,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but tell us some of that history.
Yeah. I was born in the States while my parents were here for education, my dad specifically. When I was a wee little lad, like 18 months or something like that, we moved to Russia, which is where my family is from. And I grew up there until I was about 12, 13, at which point we moved back to Kentucky, of all places, and went to high school here. 2 years of middle school. Yeah, 2 years of middle school, high school. Went to college at Asbury. That was an experience. While I was at college, I started to realize that I was queer. And coming from a very evangelical, very Pentecostal background, that was a trip, to say the least. And it also happened as I was starting to deconstruct and starting to take apart my faith and really reevaluating what I believed and what I thought was true about God. And so a lot of things happened very quickly. And little by little, I think COVID was a pretty major push in me realizing that I was queer. COVID and TikTok, of all things. So my freshman year, actually one of your classes, and a lot of the things that you said, one, kept me alive because I was not doing great mentally, and two, they expanded my idea of faith and made it a lot more people-centric, if that made sense. So I really started to take one specific lyric from a worship song, Close to Heart. It says, "Break my heart for what breaks yours, everything I am for the kingdom's cause." And logically, what I gathered from that was, well, what does God's heart break for? The people. The people. And so because of that conclusion, I started listening on TikTok mostly to people sharing their stories of church hurt, of abandonment from or by family members, as well as the joys that they got from their communities and their families, their friends, all of those good things. And little by little, TikTok shared with me a lot of different queer stories. I learned about lesbians. I learned about gay men, gay cis men, I should clarify. And then trans people, and more specifically, transmasculine people. So people who were assigned female at birth, just like me, and later came to know that they are not woman. And I resonated in very surprising ways with a lot of the stories that I saw.
And I want to pick back up there in a moment. But I also want to mention that particular song. I think it's in the bridge of the song where it says, "Break my heart for what breaks yours." Just to be clear, the writers of that song were talking about unsaved people.
Yeah.
And how interesting that it was so that for what you heard, I'm sure it started off that way for you.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into this weight. But what if your heart breaks for marginalized people?
Yeah.
What if your heart breaks for these people I'm watching on TikTok
Yeah.
who think that you are out to get them?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that switch in perception or perspective was fueled by an idea that I think you proposed in class one time, an intro to worship arts, of what if God is better than we think? And that just expanded my idea of who God could be.
I hadn't gone down this road before, but one of the things that's most hurtful to a person is when they think that they have hurt somebody else and that wasn't what they meant to do. And you know, we've all experienced that, where someone comes to you and says, hey, when you said this, it really hurt me.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm so sorry. That is not at all what I meant. That is not at all who I am or what I would have meant to have communicated with you. And if God is in that position constantly of like, no, that's not what I've been trying to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been trying to condemn you
Yeah.
and change you from who you are.
Right.
That would absolutely break God's heart. I mean, that
Yeah.
makes so much more sense
Yeah.
as what would break God's heart.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're now start thinking about what trans male might mean for you. And my experience is whenever I have an identity crossroads. So this happens when people get married. It happens when they get divorced. You start revisiting all of the past things in light of what you're thinking now. So did you start to look back on your life and say, oh, this might explain this and this?
I'm doing that now that I'm a lot more secure in my identity. At the time, though, throughout college, I didn't have the knowledge that I have now of being trans and transmasculine. Some days a trans man, some days just a little guy. Gender non-conclusive. That's not an actual identity. That just sounded funnier.
I like it.
Yeah,
It's like you can coin it.
I could make some sick merch. Anyway, no, but at the time, believing that I was a woman, but feeling uncomfortable in my body, I first kind of brushed off the discomfort as just like the typical female body image issues, like, oh, I feel just fat, that's why I'm uncomfortable in my body. And then I heard a lot of trans and non-binary people specifically say that, like, yeah, but also it's a gender thing. It could be a gender thing. And I remember one of the first times that I realized that I am more than just woman. I felt a sense of gender euphoria when I realized this and admitted it to myself. I was at a friend's house that I was staying at over the summer, right before my junior year. I had just cut my hair, shorter than it had ever been at that point, but before I shaved my head. And I just looked in my mirror and I didn't see girl first and me second. I saw me first. And then like a hint of woman, and that felt good. Like I saw myself and less of girl.
That is so profound.
Yeah.
You know, God is obviously non-gendered. And how odd that we would think that that is one of our primary identities
Yeah.
as male or female when it's not at all who God is.
But it's biblical because it's in the Bible that God created man and woman. No.
We're going to talk, by the way, one of these days we'll talk about the Bible and transgender.
Yeah. I got a couple of books that I need to read before we.
Yeah, I got
Enter
one
that.
yesterday. Yeah,
Good.
by somebody that was involved at least at the Asbury Seminary.
Shoot.
I know.
Oh,
So
tea.
we'll see.
Anyway, but yeah, so like that first realization of, oh, I'm not who I thought I was, felt both really scary and really freeing at the same time. And then throughout the following years, I went down the stereotypical journey of using all of the pronouns under the sun. So I went from she, her, to she, they, to they, she, they, them, they, he, and now I'm at he, they. So I took every stop, tried everything on, and it was an evolution of my own understanding of myself and also the queer community throughout that gender slide, quote unquote, I was learning a lot of the terminology that I lacked as a child. And so earlier you asked if, like hindsight 2020, if I'm seeing the things that I did as a child in a different way now. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when this is going to be a little bit vulnerable, borderline graphic, so trigger warning for cancer and like really bad diagnoses, but one of the things that I wished for during puberty was that I would get breast cancers so that I would not have to have boobs. Like, that's not a normal thought. And it scared the shit out of me. So I never told anybody. I knew because it was instilled in me from my parents, through the community, that I was developing into a woman. I was reaching my potential, all these good things that were also shamed, but also being different from that was shamed. It's just shame, shame, shame. Any way you spin it, it's shame, even if it's like a good thing that's celebrated and acknowledged as a good thing. It's still shameful somehow. So unlearning that and learning the language of, oh, that's what that is. Like,
Yeah, when you look back, you say, oh,
yeah, like cis women don't want to get breast cancer to get rid of their boobs. Like,
yes.
no, they don't. That doesn't happen. Yeah.
So, in the journey, you went from straight cisgender and to more of a lesbian kind of.
I was
No,
bi
not
for
lesbian.
I was bi for a really long time.
Okay, bi. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then started down a trans kind of way.
Yeah.
But if somebody looked at you today, I mean, I think this is a really common misunderstanding of trans in general. But I think if somebody looked at you today, they would say, well, for one thing, you have on makeup.
That's true. I do. And I'm wearing pink.
And you're wearing pink.
Yeah.
You know, why are you telling us that you are male?
Yeah.
And yet you're doing these, what we
Girly
call
things.
these girly things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you explain that?
I explain that as, can I say the F word? Can I say the F slur here? No, I am a faggot. Like, I am. It's so funny to me because in the specifically gay male community, there's a lot of stereotypes of twinks being more effeminate. But then when it comes to trans masculine people and trans men, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to be a little bit more feminine and wear makeup and wear short shorts and crop tops. Like, we're not allowed that just because we're trans. That doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Like, that's
Yeah,
something
right,
that I
right,
want
right.
to do. Why
I
am
think
I
a
not
lot
allowed
of the
to do
people that would say that would also be against gay men
Oh, yeah.
doing those things.
Oh, yeah.
So, in fact, I've even heard straight cisgender men say, why do you say you're a male and yet you obviously hate all men?
Okay. Weird conclusion to come to. But
So
okay.
I mean, I don't even know how to go down that road.
Yeah.
Like, but I think that is not an uncommon
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably more true for lesbians that you hate all men and yet act like a man.
Yeah. Specifically for butch
Yeah, right.
lesbians.
Right.
Yeah. I could see that. I think personally, I don't believe in a gender binary. I think it's kind of like a sliding scale, but even that doesn't quite encompass everything that gender is. my gender identity is fairly complex. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
give us some of the names.
yeah. So here's the rundown. Starting from the most general to the more concrete. I don't know, but even the yeah. So anyway, I am trans, transmasculine, non-binary, gender fluid. Like all of those labels are correct to describe who I am.
And just as a moment of clarity, we've talked about that we're going to talk about this.
Yes.
Please don't ever ask a trans person, so how do you identify yourself?
So what
your-"
are you? Yeah, no. It's cool to ask
Just to
for
be clear on
pronouns. Asking for pronouns, we love that.
Yeah, pronouns is great.
But asking, what are you? That's a little weird. That's a little weird. I get it. I was there once.
No,
I
yeah,
used to,
yeah, but
I used
no,
to ask.
no.
but,
I
but
mean,
also,
there's no
Yeah.
okay. There's no okay in that. I don't ask. I mean, I don't know. Maybe other people do, but I don't ask my cisgender male friends.
right.
So, what do you fantasize about in your sexual life?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really pretty similar.
Yeah. To some degree, yeah. And it's less of a fantasy
What I mean is,
and
it's
more
it's
of
a
like
no, but I mean, it's
identity.
a privacy thing.
yes, that
It's
yes.
similar in that that's not my right to ask.
Yeah. Now, I am not. Trans people are not a monolith. So even though I am trans, I do not speak for all trans people. There are lots of trans people who are very uncomfortable with talking about their transness. And in the same way, there are lots of trans people that are much more comfortable talking about their labels and how they identify, and they can really get into it with you about their identity. And so, yeah, it just kind of depends on the person of whether or not you can get into the tussle of,
Well, and how close you are.
yeah,
But one of the advantages of the label queer is that it's such a big umbrella that you don't have to, and I think that's a fair thing to ask if you're
Yeah.
queer,
yeah,
because it doesn't identify, it's not too intrusive.
right, yeah,
I don't know, I wouldn't ask somebody that,
right,
but I don't think most people would be offended by that.
yeah.
I don't know.
And I think, and I think if you're in community with any queer person or any trans person, like inevitably you will have conversations about
Sure.
identity, about
Yeah.
quote unquote lifestyle. Like things will come up. That, yeah. But
So here you are now,
yes.
and you talk about yourself as being transmasculine. But I love the idea of spectrum instead of binary. I think, and spectrum, as you said, is not complete either
Yeah.
because it's fluid
Right.
where you are on the spectrum, and the spectrum isn't 2D, it's 3D. The spectrum involves so many things,
Yeah.
and it's complex, and all labels are very helpful. But they
Until they're
also are very wrong. They're almost always helpful, almost always wrong,
Yeah.
because they are binary in nature. You are
Right.
this and not this. And so to try to live outside of labels is helpful and hard.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. An analogy came to my mind. It's kind of identity is kind of like, and it's not. It's kind of a broken analogy, but bear with me. Take it with a grain of salt or a bucket of salt. I don't know. We'll find out. Identity is kind of like driving a car or owning a car. You might have a car for. Let's say you'll have a blue car for 5 years. you're the owner of a blue car. And then maybe something happens to it, or you get sick of it if you're rich like that, and you decide to buy a white car, and you drive it for however many years. Does that mean that when you were driving a blue car, that's wrong, or that didn't happen? No, you still drove the blue car. You owned the blue car for a while, but now you're driving a white car. Yeah, at least
Yeah.
that's how my experience has been. I've also heard and know of quite a number of people who that analogy doesn't quite make sense, where it wasn't this was true for them at one time and they were comfortable with that. It was just a different experience, and I
Yeah.
can't speak to that.
And I mean, it's so true that every person's experience is different. So a lot of gay men are not, they're not trans in any way, they're not non-binary, they are gay men.
Yeah.
And that's a label that makes sense. I'm a straight cisgender man. All that's true,
Yeah.
and in some ways not true. I mean, you know, in that spectrum sense.
Yeah, because you really like the big overhead lights, and that's kind of gay of you.
And so,
You're also late all of the time, which is also a very common trait in the queer community. And I say this with a lot of love. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn it into a roast John session.
no, but that's exactly right. I have so many feminine qualities, what we
Yeah.
would culturally consider feminine.
Right.
Like, I love art.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love music. I love dance. Okay.
Oh, whoa, John.
Now, I don't love organ, so there's that. But no, I mean, I have a lot of
Yeah.
of qualities that culturally we would think of as feminine.
Yeah.
And so, I was talking to someone recently who has a parent who is a man's man, you know, Marine kind of person, and the person is queer.
Yeah.
And very difficult for the father to understand a queer kid,
Yeah.
because I mean, this person has done all of the male things, and whereas if it were somebody like me, it would
Yeah.
be like, well, of course they would understand.
Yeah, and this is a topic that I could probably talk about for hours, and it could be a really good thing for us to talk
Yeah,
about. To
we
dedicate
might go
a
down
session
at some point.
of masculinity is so often defined by all of the things that it is not, and it in a way lacks substance. Whereas femininity is defined by all of the things that it is.
Well, that's really interesting.
And that was also that realization for me played a pretty big part, and I think hindered my developing into who I am now to some degree, because I wasn't ready to let go of all of the things that I was that squarely fell into the femininity area of the spectrum. And I wasn't
And you
ready.
still have plenty of those.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think for a while I kind of hid them, specifically like thinking of wearing makeup. I couldn't wear makeup for a number of years. Yeah, but realizing that I'm not a woman and realizing that I'm more transmasculine, a trans man, the jump from having so much and then having to restrict myself to fit into a stereotype or to fit into the box of man as defined by the people, the society around me, I wasn't ready to do that because that hurt. I had to get rid of so much. And so when thinking about the developmental stages for children, like people assigned male at birth, and men, cis men, more specifically, growing up, they're not allowed to do certain things. They're not allowed to explore past a certain point. Or they will face the consequence or the punishment of being perceived as feminine, which is bad. And society labels it as bad. So this is the conversation that has so many facets around it. And it,
Yeah, so I wanted to go down that identity piece a little bit. You know, identity really is important. And you have, you know, so many identity issues. And I don't mean that you have the issues. I mean, you have reason to have so many identity issues. Because not only are you non-binary, you are also, in so many ways, a third culture kid.
yeah,
And so culturally Russian and American.
yeah,
So that identity piece is, you know, is huge. Missionary kids face this in spades. I'm not going to say anybody here that have to have had to deal with that kind of thing. But how true, right? That I mean, culturally, where is your identity?
yeah.
So historically, people have taken identity in their nationality, in their gender, and in their family.
Yeah. I don't remember the last time that I talked to my parents. So
So,
it's tough.
yeah, I
It's
mean,
tough.
it was so much that way in biblical times that you were
Yeah.
known as Simon, son of
Son of-
John.
Yeah.
Jesus, son of Joseph. That was identity as for Jesus as a Jew.
Yeah.
You know, obviously the masculine or feminine, the male or female, was tremendous part of the identity
Right.
for the biblical writers' time. I mean, and so now, all of a sudden, here you are,
Yeah.
and all three of those identities, the would have been the strongest, parts of identity, you can't. They're not firm for you. You're non-binary. You have not dual citizenship, but do you have actually dual citizenship?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you have chosen family
Yeah.
and biological family. The other piece of that is religion.
Yeah.
So you're a Christian, but you're sort of not. I wouldn't call yourself a Christian. And
Absolutely not.
So, well, how are you going to start talking about identity?
Yeah. It's like, where do I start? Because no matter at which point I pick at the thread, everything else is connected to it. For me, at least. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's a real question. I think part of the reason almost every queer person I know, maybe every that I know well enough to know, needs to be in therapy. And I think that's because of this identity piece of like trying to, we've been told that this is who we are, but it isn't. So who am I?
So I would actually say that it's not an identity thing.
Yeah, tell me more.
It is a cultural thing.
Oh, sure. No, absolutely.
Because it's not so much the identity that I struggled with, it's the fitting in piece.
Yeah, right.
And contextualizing myself and who I am in the context of my family, my chosen family, my friends, the whatever community that I'm part of. For me, for a lot of my deconstruction and my growing into queerness, that all happened at Asbury. which was a tough place to do that. I mean, it is not for the faint of heart. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
to do
I-
this kind of work.
yeah, but it was also a saving grace of I was not the first and definitely not the only one. Oh my God, as homophobic as Asbury is, it is gay as hell. Oh my God, gay, 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 gay. That's what Asbury is. Anyway, sorry.
So,
May I say something real quickly? I didn't know, like, than anybody else that wasn't while I was there.
they were there.
They very much were.
Hiding, but from me, but.
Yeah.
Well, so tell me, how do you identify yourself?
Queer?
Yeah. Is that it?
No. I mean,
So that's part of it.
transmasculine,
yeah.
binary, all of those.
But I mean,
Yeah.
but that's not all of you who you are.
No.
What are other ways that you take identity? As an artist?
Yeah, artist. For a while, songwriter, musician. Less so now, for better or for worse. I think in my Instagram bio for a really long time, I had a student of life, love, and art. I think that was the order. It might have been different, but yeah.
Do you take identity as a lover of people? As a kind person? You know, what are adjectives that you would use that would say, oh, yeah, that's who I am?
I don't know if I have an answer yet. Mostly because
And you don't have to.
Right, yeah. For a very long time, and this is still kind of true now, I have been so disconnected from my identity. And part of it is for mental health reasons. I struggle a lot with dissociation, which is a symptom of anxiety or a comorbidity, whatever the heck, I'm not sure. But because of that piece, I am not always deeply connected with my body, with myself. And I would not say that it is because I am trans. It's maybe a little bit more obvious because I'm trans. But yeah. So identity has always been really tricky for me, even growing up when I thought that I was cis and straight and a woman. So
I think that it's something I want us as a church to explore further. And by the way, I think probably every Gen Zer and probably millennial has had to face identity questions, whether they're straight or
Right.
queer.
yeah, oh, for sure.
And so virtually every millennial or Gen Z person I know is rightfully in therapy,
Yeah,
because to work through that is really important work.
yeah,
And the church has totally abdicated any voice in this.
yeah,
And so I'm so happy. Therapy it's the miracle of our age.
yeah. Definitely one of many.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of many. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
of
for
course.
sharing with us.
Thank you for making space to
And
do this.
and for being just so vulnerable in it.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
of course.
And now we're going to go into
A
some
time of art.
of art.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can be very male and love art.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I think a lot of things in this life, in this culture, are gendered, and I don't think they should be. Art is one of those things. So what I have prepared for us today is kind of a twofold thing. We're going to continue making art, and the thing that we're going to do is kind of a continuation of what we did a little bit ago with rainbows with the original pride flag colors. So I've got that here. I've got the markers for it, and I also have a couple of prompts for you all to either write about or draw about. I've got the 2 prompt sheets here. The first question is, what does pride mean to you? And the second one is, what are you most proud of in yourself or your life? So feel free to come sit at the table, talk, chat, draw, make art, reflect on all of the things. Yeah. And that's a wrap. Almost said dismissed, but we're not in school.